The Dunkerque class were the first French capital ships actually completed after the Britannia class way back in the first half of the 1910s. This was thanks to a combination of the First World War and the French habit at the time of being extremely late to everything naval. The French had ordered the Normandy class in 1912, but this was severely limited in its size due to the capacity of French shipyards and weapons manufacturers. Therefore, whilst the Bayern and Queen Elizabeth classes would carry 8 15-inch guns, the Normandies were designed to carry 12 13.4-inch guns in 3 quadruple turrets. A couple of years later, designing the Lyon class, the French designers decided that since working on a 15-inch gun would take too long, they'd just stick another quad turret on it and call it a day, with no less than 16 main battery guns. World War I put a stop to these classes, but in the mid-1920s the Italian Navy was building modern heavy cruisers with 8-inch guns, which could threaten the French supply lines between France and its African colonies. A response was needed, and so a series of designs were considered. Somewhere along the line, they appear to have forgotten what they were supposed to be countering, because the designs that emerged over the next few years were wildly different. At first, a 17,500-ton classic battlecruiser with a pair of quadruple 12-inch turrets was considered. This was promptly followed by an absolutely colossal 37,000-ton battlecruiser design, which added 20,000 tons of displacement in exchange for somewhat better armour and an additional quad turret. Presumably at least 10,000 tons was needed for the wine and cheese stores. Anyway, a similar fast battleship design with 3 twin 16-inch turrets was also drawn up. As someone then pointed out that no French naval dockyard existed that could actually build these monsters, and the designs were quietly shelved amidst much embarrassed coughing and shuffling of feet. As the 1930s approached, a pair of events occurred. Firstly, the Germans started building their so-called pocket battleships, which could outrun any of the French battleships and outgun any of the French cruisers. Secondly, the French Naval Chief of Staff popped up and offered an actual same design, a 24,000-ton ship with 10 12-inch guns in 3 turrets, but only enough armour to withstand 8-inch shells. Faced with this new threat, the French quickly made a few changes to the design. The ship was given increased armour to deal with 11-inch shells, in exchange for which one turret was dropped in favour of a pair of super-firing forward-mounted quadruple turrets, and these were given 13-inch guns as a handy way of matching older Italian battleships as well. 16 130mm dual-purpose guns in 3 quadruple and a pair of twin turrets made up the secondary battery, along with 5 twin 37mm anti-aircraft guns and 8 quadruple 13.2mm heavy machine guns. All this was packed into a slightly heavier 26,500-ton hull, which made them easily superior to the German ships, although their thin armour rendered them more battlecruiser than battleship. The pair of ships would be named the Dunkerque and the Strasbourg. The German response was to order the Scharnhorsts, with 9 improved 11-inch guns and battleship-grade armour. Due to the 11-inch armament, the French were content with their design standards. However, the Italians ordered the Littorio class with 15-inch guns around about the same time, which meant the new French ship was no longer heavily protected enough. As a result, the Strasbourg, which was not yet built, was revised to have a thicker belt, deck, and turret armour, whilst design work started on the next French battleships, the Richelieus. Aside from a few training and patrol duties, the ships did relatively little before the Second World War, as they were only really just finished in time for it. In the initial part of the war, the ships were quite active, taking part in numerous operations to try and intercept various German raiding ships alongside the Royal Navy. Dunkerque also found the time to ship part of the French gold reserve to Canada after some brief repairs to damage taken from a huge Atlantic storm. With the Italians looking increasingly aggressive, the ships were recalled in April 1940 and ended up in Mers el Kabir. From our episodes on other French battleships, you probably know what's about to happen, but because it bears much repeating, the French admiral present was basically an idiot and pretty much cost several thousand of his countrymen their lives. There will be a specific video on that situation, but we'll see how that goes. Anyway, the British ended up opening fire, and the Dunkerque was hit by 4 15-inch shells, which of course she wasn't designed to take. That said, the divide in the quadruple turrets saved half the crew in her upper turret when the right-hand side took a direct hit. With critical damage to her engines from some of the other hits, the ship wasn't going anywhere. Strasbourg did manage to get underway and narrowly escaped a barrage of shells, making it to Toulon by the following evening. The British stopped firing after 20 minutes, and so damage inflicted was limited. Unfortunately, another French admiral decided this was the perfect time to boast over a radio message that he knew the British could read that the Dunkerque was not badly damaged and would be on its way very soon. Its new anchorage was close to civilian structures, and since the British wanted to avoid collateral damage, but also now had orders to make sure the ship was definitely knocked out, they attacked with torpedo bombers. As sheer bad luck would have it, a patrol ship moored next to Dunkirk was carrying 44 depth charges and was hit by one of the torpedoes, resulting in a massive explosion that ripped the bottom out of the ship, and it sank pretty much immediately in shallow water. Luckily, the crew had flooded the main magazines, so the ship did not explode as well. By February 1942, enough repairs had been made to get the ship to Toulon, where it joined the Strasbourg. The bad luck continued, though, as in November the Germans tried to seize the ships, at which point the French did scuttle them. To add insult to injury, the Italians then tried to salvage and dismantle the Strasbourg, which meant that as a floating target, she was then bombed and sunk again by American aircraft in August 1944, with both ships scrapped after the war as completely unsalvageable.
That's it for this video. Thanks for watching. If you have a comment or suggestion for a ship to review, let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to comment on the pinned post for dry dock questions.